Take a good look.
She was beautiful. She looked like an everyday daughter or sister to somebody.
Now imagine that she's your sister or daughter.
Somebody must know who this young woman is.
And she's been lying in a nameless grave for over 30 years.
This was a brutal, brutal murder.
But could one of the coldest of cold cases finally be on the verge of a breakthrough? The mystery began on a September morning in 1976 near a cemetery in Woodlawn, Maryland.
Between 9:20 and 10:20 that morning, a woman was driving by with her daughter in the car, and they saw a van leaving this area. Within an hour, a gentleman driving down Dogwood Road saw what he thought was a human body, which was lying right here in this particular area. Her head was at this angle facing towards Dogwood Road. Her feet were up in that area.
Detective Dave Jacoby is still haunted by the gruesome crime scene.
Her upper torso had been wrapped in a sheet. Underneath of that sheet were some bandanas wrapped around her head. What was unusual about that was some eye slits had been cut out of those bandanas. Her hands were bound behind her back with rope. She was also bound around her neck. We believe that she was murdered somewhere else and that she was placed possibly in the back of that van and driven around while the killer looked for a convenient place to dispose of the body.
Even more disturbing, an autopsy reveals that she was violently sexually assaulted before being savagely strangled.
We found a necklace wrapped around her neck. The necklace was a piece of rawhide and had almost what I would describe as a coral blue stone with a hole in the center of it hanging from it. From there, we found a seed bag. What we discovered was that the Farm Bureau produced this particular product in the Buffalo area of New York, and that it was only distributed to 5 different places in the state of Massachusetts. We found some keys in her pocket. We also discovered that those keys had been manufactured in the Massachusetts area.
And here's something else. The woman had traces of chlorpromazine in her stomach, a powerful sedative often used in psychiatric hospitals. Plus, the sheet she was wrapped in was 130 thread count, a low-quality material commonly found in institutions. Is it possible that Jane was a psychiatric patient in Massachusetts, or that her killer worked at the facility?
What we do know is we have a young lady who's 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed approximately 149 pounds. She has an 1.5 inch long scar on her thigh. She has a tattoo on her arm with the initials JP.
Another unique physical trait, the victim had a widow's peak. Yet despite all this evidence, a tireless effort with authorities in Massachusetts failed to produce any leads to Woodlawn's Jane Doe. And as months passed into years, any hope of identifying the victim or her deranged killer began to fade.
We haven't been able to identify this young lady to this day. Someone has to know who she is.
Jacoby's determination to bring Jane justice is shared by forensic scientist Laura Pulowski.
She could be from anywhere, so how do you narrow the focus when you're trying to identify someone, especially at this late date when you can't even pinpoint what area of the country they're from?
But after more than 3 decades comes a glimmer of hope from a most unexpected source. She's known only as Woodlawn Jane Doe, a young woman in her late teens or early 20s who in 1976 suffered a gruesome fate.
Given the way her body was found, the fact that her hands were bound, her feet may have been bound, the rope was tied around her neck, this was a brutal, brutal murder. For me, nobody deserves to die like this.
For 30 years, Baltimore County investigators circulated Jane's photo nationwide and made countless pleas for the public's help. Yet no help came until now.
Recently, the Border Patrol contacted us, and they offered to do pollen analysis on her clothing that she was wearing at the time her body was found.
They didn't know about DNA back in 1976, so a lot of times items were often not stored properly. We were lucky in this case that almost every item still had an intact package.
The test hit pay dirt, identifying a unique combination of hemlock and cedar.
They were able to pinpoint these 2 pollens together at only 2 locations. One was the New York Botanical Garden, the other was Harvard University in Boston. Based on the other evidence available in the case, it is believed the victim actually was in the Boston area prior to coming to Maryland.
Now that Detective Dave Jacoby knows where to look, he needs to know what to look for. Enter forensic artist Evelyn Grant, a specialist at bringing the dead back to life.
When everything else fails, that's when the forensic artist comes in. On the field, I've done several hundred investigations. I would probably say maybe a third, 20% of the cases have been a result directly from the forensic art. When I worked on the Woodlawn Jane Doe case, he explained the basics, what the case involved, and then asked if I could take the morgue photograph, clean it up enough that we can produce an image of her, a likeness so we can air it. When I'm working on the photographs, I do think about why are they missing? Why isn't somebody looking for them? What did they go through, to be on my desk? It's sad. You have this, and it slowly goes with the creation to make sure all the features are lined up into the image of the final outcome.
Grant's work produces an astonishing and vivid photograph.
Once this photograph is complete and we're happy with the outcome of how Jane Doe looks, we're going to do an age regression of her. And of course, the purpose of that is if she is a runaway or she's not from the area, maybe somebody knew her at a younger time. So now I want to make her look younger. With children, they tend to have a larger eye look because the eyes don't change in life. They grow into their features. By the time I get to the end, this is still her with the age regression look. And that's pretty much how she's going to look at a younger age.
Scientific data that pinpoints where she was from, new photographs of what she looked like at the time of her death and as a child. All Jane needs now is your help.
Somebody must know who this young woman is. Somebody must remember her.
I couldn't imagine missing a daughter or sister, not knowing where they are.
If the right person would just call us, not only can we identify her, we have a really, really good chance of solving this case.
Someone out there knows who this woman is, and here are the 5 clues that we hope will solve this mystery. First, these photos of what she looked like before and at the time of her murder. Number 2, we know she once lived in or around Boston before moving to Maryland. Number 3, she was wearing this necklace. 4, she was drugged with a powerful sedative used in psychiatric hospitals. And 5, the sheet she was wrapped in was commonly found in institutions.